Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Survivor 50 Wishlist podcast, an off-season series where we're determining who could and should come back for a possible Survivor 50 on the horizon. Today, we are heading back to Panama for the third and last time, but shaking things up a little bit as we're going down to 4 tribes, albeit briefly, and we are welcoming in really a titular twist for the first time in Survivor history in
Mhm.
Survivor Exile Island, a season full of colorful characters that ended up spawning what some would argue was the biggest, best non winner in Survivor history. Of course, I am not alone. I am joined by somebody who, listen, I will not put necessarily on the older women's tribe. I don't want to necessarily date anyone or age
Okay.
anybody, even though it's a sliding scale, though, too. Sari was on the older women's tribe, but I think she was like 35 at the time of
Yep.
this being filled, Mari, for.
We are the same age. I would have been on the older women's tribe with Suri if if I was on this season. I was so upset when I found that. I was like, she was 35, and then even worse, Melinda was 32.
Oh, so it's all comparative, right? Like obviously they weren't casting for let's get the 4 oldest women and the 4 oldest men. It was more so we got our 16. Well, I guess we could divide by age and gender. So let's pick
Yeah.
the 4 oldest women and the 4 oldest men. But to your point, it certainly gave, I think, us millennials in retrospect a bit of a midlife crisis now that we're reaching the
Oh
age of the
yeah.
older women.
Oh yeah. And what's even worse, I think I would be so mad. Courtney was 31. So like
Oh, this is a real like millennials versus Gen X Ken situation, right? Where he was like a year younger or a year older than like the oldest millennial, but he was put on the Gen X tribe.
Yes, exactly. It's so funny. Survivor just they them and their themes. This, like you said, this is kind of like when they do like the stunt casting. I believe this is the first time that they do 4 tribes. And then we get, Cook Islands, very interesting,
Yeah.
this tribe breakdown.
Yeah, so we're going to get into it. They say age is just a number, but we're here to determine a number of Survivor Panama contestants to put on our short list for a big fan poll towards the end. So, Mari, I think
Mhm,
Survivor Panama, it's a really interesting season baked into this very experimental middle era of the show, I would say.
mhm.
They're trying out, again, the first sort of like structural twist as well as season subtitle in Exile Island. They had a brief date with it in
Mhm.
Palau and they decided to make it official where people are going to Exile Island. This introduced, the second form of the hidden immunity idol in the form of what's now known as the super idol, which was
Or the god idol.
yeah, which
Mhm.
was a shrunken zombie head, which was absolutely
Yikes.
wild to me and probably accumulated like so much shit in it by the end because Terry never ended up using it. This is, with the exception of token sheens, the last time we will see 16 players since really the old pre All-Stars era where we're going to have 16 players, a jury of 7, a final 2, which again
Mhm.
is only going to pop up 2 more times after this in Survivor history. So it kind of does feel like this odd little throwback to the early seasons nestled in this middle era.
Yeah, I agree with you when you said the word is experimenting. This definitely felt like we are throwing a lot of stuff at the wall here. Let's see how it goes. And still like and a lot for that time period. Let's be
Mm.
clear because I mean now we we have advantages, we have journeys, but for this time period, it really did feel like the idol being able to be used after the votes are read is just I hate that mechanic to me. And like the only good thing about that mechanic that they kind of made it not as super as it could have been is that you had to have the idol in your possession. Like he couldn't play it on somebody else.
Mhm.
But um just I hate that mechanic. But Exile Island, a good one. I mean, in comparison to like your Edge of Extinctions or your Journeys or whatever, like Exile Island has always been pretty fun. You know what I'm saying? Like it always breeds resentment as well. I think that's another reason why this was a little of a spicy season with a lot of people getting sent there and stuff like that. So it does. It feels weird. It feels like Survivor was trying to catch their flow. They were trying to figure out what can we do to switch it up a little bit, and it worked. I mean, it's still I think it's a really good season of television, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about spiciness. I mean, that spice rack is really contained in one tribe. The four tribes, as experimental as we say, breaks down immediately, much like the
Immediately, yeah.
Age of Agents should have been. In episode 2, they pick brand new tribes, and we have really Goofus and Gallant in the Laminas, who are like these very kind of comparatively straight-laced, mild-mannered people
Mhm,
versus the Kasayas, which are just chaos personified. I know we have
mhm,
described that for tribes like Lulu and Yanu in
mhm,
recent years, but like this is the original version of that. Maybe Madama was like the original version, but this I
mm.
think is the most well remembered one where
Yeah.
somehow they have assembled the wackiest group of personalities and trapped them all together in the most sitcom like situations. And that also leads into Mari, in my opinion, this being one of the funniest, if not the funniest Survivor season ever.
Oh, completely agreed. It's so hilarious that a tribe that really, like, hated each other managed to then go on a run, like a
Yeah.
5-0 run where they only vote out 2 people, I believe, the whole time. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
so and they enter the merge with the numbers, even though, like, and then not only do they enter the merge with the numbers, but the day before the merge, they're all like, "I cannot wait to get away from you guys. I'm gonna flip as immediately," and then, like, as they're seeing the merge pull up, they're like, "Guys, like, we
Yeah.
gotta stick together," and
But
they
it's
managed to do it,
And
so
they are able to do it at least in the first few votes, obviously, to pick off
yeah.
basically all the Lamina members except for Terry. But then what becomes interesting is like because Terry either keeps winning immunity or has this idol, they're forced to turn amongst themselves. And now finally these cracks become fractures, to your point. It
Yes,
leads to a game-changing move in the three,
my
two,
favorite
one
move.
Courtney vote.
Mhm,
It leads to the Shane blindside. It leads to this really interesting tie at the final four where like Terry has been largely disregarded as a number at this point, but now he's
mhm,
brought in at the last second to protect somebody like Danielle. So that's the thing is that it's not just like a vibe season, in my opinion, especially when it gets
mhm.
down to the end game. There's actually some really exciting gameplay going on at the same time.
Oh yeah, for like if for it to be almost like a glorified Pagong, like it's still a lot of fun. And I think the what makes it fun is because it's the Chaos Tribe that is doing the picking off, to be quite to be quite
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, the
Because
idea that, like, they're gonna get in a fight the day
yes,
before, but then they'll come back, they're like, "I hate you with every fiber of my being. I did promise I would vote with you, so I have to
yes.
now. I'm bound to this."
It is so funny. I love how when the Kasai tribe first forms, Shane, Aris, Courtney, and Danielle form a majority within their 7-person alliance. They get together, they lose that first immunity, and they vote out Melinda like kind of like no problems. But the minute that happens, it's like and even the Melinda vote out actually did
Yeah,
have
because
the
because
problems
Shane
because
threatened to
Shane
quit.
yes. Shane threatened to quit, and then not only did he threaten to quit, and Ars talk him out of it, which Cherie was like, "Why you not let him quit?
Yeah, if he wants to quit, let him quit.
Let him quit." But then Ars comes up and like, "Well, I'm gonna vote for the two of you, so I don't know." And then Shane is like, "I don't care whichever one of you goes. The next one's going next." I was like, "Jesus, man! Like this, that tribe was so hilarious.
I
It
mean,
was the
the o
comedy."
the only other vote they do pre-merge is the Bob Dog vote, in which the vote count was 3 to 2 to 1 to 1. If they went to tribal council one more time before the merge, there's a non-zero chance that everyone gets a vote. That it's like a 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 tie.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, speaking of Bobby, he's probably the only person on that tribe that got, like, an even less edit with everything going on.
And he
Purple
still had
Bobby.
his moments where he housed a bottle of wine inside of an outhouse, which is a ridiculous sentence to say, but it happened in Survivor. Like, this was a truly fortunate season where, again, usually on paper, Lamina, the stronger, more stabler tribe, full of the
Mhm.
more athletic people, would be
Yep.
the one to just pick everybody off, all the kooky characters at the merge, and we complain about a boring endgame. But we were
Mhm.
so blessed that the exact opposite happened here. And look, it ended up giving birth to Suri. One of the biggest stories of like someone who was afraid of leaves within the first few days becoming this absolute titan of the game who has never been properly voted out of the tribe.
I love Suri. Like, of course, I've been on the Micronesia podcast. I've been on a few of those. And Suri is truly my favorite Survivor player. I want to
Same,
say I was
same,
gonna say
yeah.
one of, but I'm like, nah, she is my favorite Survivor player. And
Is she
being
your
able
favorite
to,
Big Brother player?
I mean, because Daniel Reyes is right there,
That's
but
it's
she's
true. I
still
think
a
even I
good
think
Big
even
Brother.
Suri would be like, don't consider me a Big Brother player.
Yeah, exactly. Serene would be offended if I said she's my favorite Big Brother player. Um, like watching her work and like just how subtle she had to be in the beginning, like really laying low to turning on, being strategic, using that social game, like it's a masterful game to watch, and to see that this isn't even her final form, and
Yeah.
how lucky we are that we actually got to see her play more. I'm just so happy. Like I'm so happy that she was previously brought back several times, because honestly, the way it could have been gone, she could have been one and done, and then we would have lost all like these historical reality TV moments, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, I really enjoyed watching this again. I love watching her again. And maybe a hot take. I personally am not putting her on this wish list, because I let that lady rest. Let
Oh,
that lady
interesting.
rest.
Okay, listen, I might be the one to like pull the couch out from under her and say, no, you're getting back up off it again.
Let her rest.
All right, well, we'll get into that. We'll put a pin in that. I
Yeah.
want to start as we usually do from the top down here and talk about our top two. And maybe
Mhm.
we'll talk about this with our next batch. Some argued this is maybe the reason why Jeff Probst wanted to put a final three in, is because he looked at the people that went out and said, like, all right, running with Otis and Danielle. I mean, at one point, Jeff did call Otis the most boring winner in Survivor history, which I think
Mm.
when he had his like brief tenure on RHAP where he was coming on all the time, I thought he was such a fun personality. He
Mhm.
was someone who like really knew the game, but also had a really fun comedic sense of relief, which I think you had to being part of Kasaya. In the moment, I think he's kind of personified as like the straight man of the group, perhaps
Yeah, I
cursed quite
mean,
literally, but like somebody that was like dealing with all these wacky personalities. But
yeah,
even he's got his moments, you know. Call the ambulance. Terry's crying on the chorus.
I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, I think Iris is he's a very fun casting choice here. I think him being the straight man in Kasaya should tell you everything you truly need to know about
That bar,
that
yeah, is
tribe.
either very low or very high, depending on how you put it.
And that's one reason why I think him and Suri really connected, because they're both sitting there like, what happened? Like every 2 seconds.
And also remember, again, to your point about Otis being a little bit of a weirdo himself, he did in the opening episode, correct me if I'm wrong here, like get around with the younger men and say, okay, let's all hold our hands slightly
He
above each
did.
other and generate the energy to make a fire.
To make a fire.
Also, everyone look up the younger men's shelter. It is one of the worst shelters in
It is
Survivor history.
it is like they're like, yeah. I was like, did y'all just lean a bunch of sticks against the tree?
That feels like typical like
And
young
then
men
fall?
work though, right? Of like
Yes.
20 somethings, like, yeah, we can sleep anywhere, no problem. Let's just put some sticks up against the tree. So of
It's
course,
so it's I'm sorry, but it's funny with him because that first episode, like you said, he gave off like that yogi, that weird yogi vibe,
yeah, and
right?
I believe that was his job, right?
Yes. And then like 4 days in, he's like, I haven't eaten. I was like, he can't keep it up. Like it's like he couldn't keep that level of like zenness.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just very funny after that. He
Yeah,
really
probably
hated a lot of people around him.
probably didn't help by the people that he was surrounded with. It was very like a
Yeah.
Serenity Now situation. So of course, Otis was brought back for Blood versus Water. I do think this was one of the
Yeah.
situations where they cast him more so for the loved one than him personally, just because
Yeah.
of
Vetus.
obviously, you know, his like pseudo rivalry with Vetus. Otis has a very different edit, right? He is the king. He goes off to meditate. Maybe that's why he shouldn't have been Zen in Panama, because when you go off to meditate and not look for idols, Tyson plots against your back and
Mhm.
blindsides you at the merge. Otis was asked to play Winners at War. He was one of these quote unquote old school winners to actually get the call. And he said no, citing, I believe,
Interesting.
his family at the time. And when asked in his quarantine questionnaire if he'd play again, he emphatically said no.
Mhm.
So I wonder if it's a matter where Otis obviously has his fingers in a lot of different pots, has a lot of businesses with his wife, whether it's like him feeling like his time with Survivor is done, right? He's won. He's been on the jury. He doesn't feel like he necessarily needs to come back. I do think
Honestly,
there's
yeah.
I think there's some interesting stuff though, because we talk about people coming back as parents, and like Otis, certainly his life has changed a lot in the 10 plus years since competing on Survivor last. But listen, my like one rule when it comes to putting these people on is if they explicitly say they're not going to go back, then I can't put them on the list.
Yeah, that, and I honestly don't think he needs to prove anything to go back, to be quite honest. He did
Mm,
win, he did make it a jury. I think we've seen all sides of him in both of his iterations. I think he to me, I think he's a survivor. He's not like a survivor legend, but he is like a memorable survivor character. And I think that honestly that's all you really need. Like I don't think he needs to come back, honestly.
I do think he needs to come back to podcasting because again, I remember those Otis casts were always very, very fun. I don't know if he even watches the show though still anymore.
Mhm.
Let's talk about his partner in crime here. Partner in crime, but captain of sports, if you will. Let's talk about Danielle DiLorenzo.
Yes.
So, Danielle, I would say, with no offense, probably one of the more question mark choices to bring back for Heroes versus Villains. Certainly in retrospect, because
Mhm.
she is, besides Courtney, I would say one of the most purple people on Heroes versus Villains. Maybe it's not helped by the fact that like her two tightest allies are Russell and Parvati. But I will say, Mari, yes, there's this whole idea of like, is Danielle one of the top 5 female villains in Survivor history? Probably not, but you watched the season more recently than me. I feel like she had plenty of bite to her.
For me, I didn't think she was a villain. She did
Mm,
everything she needed to do to get to the final 2, and honestly, she did not do it in a backstabby way, but I honestly think it's like, especially in those earlier seasons, like, women always get brushed with that villain stroke, um, so much easier than men. When she truly I just rewatched the whole season. She made moves that benefited her and didn't benefit her. Well, she made moves that benefited her and didn't benefit other people, but it was never in a spiteful way. Like
mhm.
the 3-2-1 vote, it really burned Terry to the point where he gets his lick back by not giving her time with her loved one. But then she's right back to working with him at the final 4, and that partnership with him at the final 4 gets her through the final 3, and she cuts him
Yep.
and gets to the final 2. Like, that is some master strategic stuff when she's not even trying to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, she wasn't even trying to be a strategic mastermind. She just went with the flow of the game and she understood doing what needs to be done. And the simple fact that when women do what needs to be done to get them to the final 2 or to get them to the end, and they're always painted as a villain, it annoys me because I do feel like if you're gonna get that villain edit too, I would love a little bit of snarkiness with it as well. And she had none of that. You know what I'm saying? So
I was
I
gonna ask 'cause I thought I had memories of like her sometimes getting into it with Shane, but I guess that was more so Courtney. Because I was thinking, okay,
no,
maybe she's feeling like the Courtney side of like, oh, the snarkiness makes you the villain.
she did get in with this into it with Shane. Shane was a horrible person, guys. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure he's great now. I'm talking about the TV character,
Hmm.
but like Shane was so messed up and so mean to these people on this tribe, to Danielle and Courtney specifically. They all three of them kept getting into fights, and I was always on Danielle's side. Like, yeah, Shane's Shane's like I don't want to say hatred, but Shane's like blindsidedness to get rid of Danielle is what was able to make that 3-2-1 go. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So I came here, I said the one person I'm gonna ride for is Danielle. I would love to see her back on for Survivor 50 for the wish list.
Well, you are not alone because Danielle posted a photo on Instagram. I want to say this was like back in like maybe 2021, which was like a fan cam of her time on her 2 seasons. And she wrote, "Man, these were the days, dot, 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 to be 24 years old again. I'm so
Mhm.
grateful for all my life experiences thus far, big and small in my life. And now I'm moving into the next chapter of my life and becoming a mother to my first son, Liam. I literally
Mhm.
couldn't be happier." And then she goes on to talk about all the great stuff that she's doing in her life. That's why I would love the chance to go back on Survivor and play one final time after I have my kids. I feel like
Mm.
going back again after what I'm going to endure with being a mom would only make me a stronger contestant, that learn what she did wrong the first and second time she played and just go out there and kick some serious ass. We will see. So she is jonesing to get back. In her quarantine questionnaire, when she was asked the same question, she put, heck yes, in 3 exclamation points. OMG, if I had one more chance, I know I would have the most amazing shot at winning. And so, for what it's worth, like, she did make a deep cut both of her times in the game, obviously making it to second place here. Makes it to 7th place, would have made it further were it not for Russell deciding to, try to undercut Parvati's closest ally. And for what it's worth, again, speaking of that personality, Danielle did give it to Russell in that final 3 speech as a result. So I wouldn't be too mad at it, to be completely honest. I think much like her heroes versus villain spot, it's something that on the surface I would be like, really? Danielle 3.0? But I think the more I would think about it, and especially from the angle we've been talking about here's someone who came into the game when she was, She was 24, and now
24,
she's,
yep.
now she's 43, has a family, and maybe has a different way of looking at things.
And for somebody who's made it so deep 2 times, I still think she would have a low profile going in. I think if she turned up on that beach at 50, people would be like, "Oh, Danielle Di Lorenzo. Okay, cool." Like, I don't think they would immediately look at her as a threat when she would immediately be a threat. You know what I'm saying? So that I think would be great to see, because there are going to be people on this wish list that we would say, oh, we would love for them to come back again, and they step foot on that beach and everybody will be gutting for them. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that would be her.
Well, on that note, let's talk about someone that fits the bill. Let's get into our jury here. So we have, in reverse order of finish from first jury to last, we have, of course, Austin Carty, the writer who famously threw the first immunity challenge and then told everyone afterwards. Then we have Sally, she of the knee socks, and the person that, to your earlier point, Terry nearly gave his idol to. We, of course, have Bruce, the first medevac Bruce in Survivor history, because there are multiple ones. Unfortunately, even though it is incredibly painful, medevac for probably the funniest reason ever, which was his constipation. We have Courtney Merritt, who is just like if Bonnaroo were a person. She's incredible. I'm sure her apartment isn't as shitty as the next person. Shane claims the man who decided it would be a good idea to quit smoking cold turkey before playing a cutthroat
Oh
game of
my God.
deprivation for $1 million. We have Cirie, and we have the last Lamina standing, the man who tied an immunity challenge record but nearly made it to the end and got cut when it came to those floating pontoons in the water, in Terry. But I want to go back to Cirie here. So I do, listen, I see your point that Cirie has done a lot. Arguably, when the rumors were out initially about Big Brother 25 is going to be Cirie coming back, I'm like, there is no way. She won the Traitors. She got her reality TV win.
True.
She doesn't need to do this anymore. Now, I think in retrospect, it was probably most likely because she would be playing alongside her son.
Her son.
And so you think on paper, she did 75 days in the Big Brother house. There's no way she would want to do a reality show. As you said, let her rest.
Yeah.
For what it's worth. First off, I think more than anything, Cirie wants to do the Amazing Race next. So maybe this would come
so fun.
if she could squeeze it in amongst all this. But whenever she has been asked, including I think as recently as the beginning of 2023, this was before Big Brother, but still, if she would want to be on, Cirie told Cheat Sheet Showbiz, quote, I would always play. I'm a true Survivor superfan, and like any opportunity, even as much as we suffer out there, it's shorter now. Which maybe that won't be the case in Survivor 50, but I think Cirie, and it's so tough because I think we're kind of the ones on the outside of a semi-toxic relationship being like, Cirie, Survivor betrays you every time. They keep finding more heartbreaking ways to take you out. But arguably the person who takes her eliminations the best is Cirie herself.
And pay her whatever you pay the winners, and then maybe double it. If she comes back, make it worth it for her.
I think that would very much be the case. I mean, I think the reason why Cirie would get a call back is the fun thing about this experiment is that we don't know what the theme is going to be yet. If there is a chance that it is a quote unquote legend season, I do believe Cirie is getting a call. I think especially with the eyes back on her and her lasting such a long time in Big Brother 25, I think Survivor would want to have her back in a heartbeat. And I might venture to say, like, there's a fair chance if and when Jeff Probst leaves that Suri could be somebody to host the show.
That'd be awesome. Oh my god. Uh, oh my god, that just made my day.
I know
But
that's my wish list now. That's my different wish list.
but honestly, maybe hot take number 2, a legend season sounds so boring to me. It's like we already had Winners at War, we had quote unquote game changers, quote unquote. Like heroes versus villains honestly was jam packed with legends. I'm the type of person I would love a redemption season. I would like
Mhm.
a season for people who like maybe gotten halfway there and something took them out at the knees or something, or give Francesca another try. Please don't let her get voted out first again.
She gets
That
an
type of thing.
immunity that cannot be given away at the first tribal council.
Exactly. Like I've always loved all-star seasons where it's more of like a redemption arc or whatever. But also going off a little off script here, I would love if season 50's theme was like new school versus old school. I think
Yeah,
that's what they would do. That's what
that's
they should do. That would be so cool.
that's my hope as well, is that
Mhm.
I think for formality's sake, I think we are putting legends on like Suri, like Parvati, like Boston Rob, Sandra, Tony, etc. on just for the voting circumstance of
Mhm.
it. But I personally think a lot of those people, especially the winners, kind of sunset their survivor careers with Winners at War. Uh, I
Exactly.
I personally would rather have new era players versus like 1 to 2 time people from seasons 1 through 39. And that's a lot
Exactly.
to pick from. But as we'll talk about, there are certainly people who have either showed up one other time or have not shown up at all for a returnee season that it would kind of suck to have them get passed over in lieu of seeing people for, in Sari's case, the 5th time, in some people's cases, the
Exactly.
6th, 7th time.
Ugh, 7. Yeah, exactly. That's what I we're on the same page here, Mike. Like I want people who've like never been back or maybe been back once. Like I don't I'm done with the three Peters, no offense.
Well, let's talk about a couple of those then that would fall
Mhm,
into this category, because you talk about wanting to see redemption. Terry Dietz, a
mm,
major part of Survivor 50. It's sad that
mhm,
he competed on a season with Sari, because I think otherwise he would be the runaway fan favorite of the season.
mhm.
Had this huge underdog arc combined with the sort of like Captain America story, right? Of like, I can do this all day. It was 1 against 6, and he basically nearly made it all the way there and would have won in the process, in possession of one of the most powerful idols in Survivor history. Was he necessarily like the most sanitary, clean record Captain America? No. I mean, there were still moments when like he argues with Sari about tripping over her torch. There was the whole
Yeah.
hierarchy of like, well, these loved ones matter more than other loved ones. There's of course the whole Wambulance situation and the rivalry
Mhm.
with Aris. But Terry does get a second chance in
Yes.
Survivor Second Chances. And look, it was a little bit of a trepidatious situation for him, right? It was the whole beach versus shelter that ends up kind of being on the losing side of that first battle. And on the swap tribe he was on, he was getting set up by Kelly Wentworth to get kicked under the bus should they go to another vote. But that all gets cut aloft when Terry is informed that there's been an emergency at home. His son requires a heart transplant.
Mm.
And
Oh,
it's this
yeah.
weird situation, right? Where like Terry is technically kind of pulled from the game by production for being like, yeah, you need to be there for
Yeah.
them. Which I don't
Mhm.
think he would have been like, no, why'd you make me go? I need to stay. Obviously, this is like a quite literal life threatening situation. We got the disclaimer after the episode that his son Danny is doing just fine. But I would say, like, I kind of think we were robbed of a Terry 2.0. And I would like to see him come back, because I do think, obviously, from a challenge perspective, he may not be able to keep up with it. He's 64 at the moment, which might be the only thing I have against it, is he's certainly up there. But like, look at him in that hero challenge against Andrew Savage and Jeremy, right? Like,
Mhm.
he was certainly pulling his own weight.
Yeah, Terry coming back, I think that would be like a good end cap to like his run here. Especially, I would love to see what an older Terry could do. Like
Hmm.
maybe if he could work more socially as opposed to just because him just depending on like winning the challenges and
Yeah.
winning that idol as much as some people love that type of arc, I personally don't. I don't like when people go on runs and they're not calling they have no we saw he had no agency for like back to back to back votes. So it's like I would love to see him come back and try and have to flex his strategic and social chops more
Yeah.
because he's no longer a physical threat. So
Yeah.
I would definitely add Terry to the wish list.
All right, well, let's talk about the other side of the cerise sandwich, as it were, in Shane Powers. Of course, a huge character in
Yeah.
Survivor Panama and leads people to ask, why has he not been back? And he has had many brushes with returning. He has been asked back for, I believe, Micronesia when the cast was a full All
Mm.
Stars at 20, and then they cut it down to 10. Shane was cut. Perhaps most infamously, he was nearly on Heroes versus Villains, but after watching Samoa and they saw the actions of Russell Hantz, they decided to cut Shane in lieu of him. South Pacific,
Oh, wow.
yeah, South Pacific. Allegedly, it was actually supposed to be. Some say it was supposed to be Coach versus Phillip. Shane claims it was supposed to be Coach versus Shane at one point as like the battle of the kooky characters, but then he got replaced by Ozzy, a complete one-for-one replacement. Blood versus Water. Shane talks all the time about his son, Boston. He had
Mhm.
Boston tattooed on his arm, and that's why Danielle picked him, funnily enough, because she'd assumed he was from Boston. We saw Boston out there, one of the youngest loved ones visits. Shane was contacted and asked to return with Boston for Blood versus Water. There's some discrepant stories. Some say that, like, they couldn't get their shit together, get their paperwork done in time. Shane has expressed, I believe, that, like, he just couldn't play against his son, that he didn't want
Mhm.
to necessarily either vote him out or like compete against him on another tribe. But the most explicit we have seen Shane be in returning is, of course, Survivor Cambodia. And in our own little bubble of the Survivor community, we learned how small we were that day, Mari, because so many people were like, oh, hell yeah, Shane's coming back. He's a lock. He is a slam dunk. Shane himself thought that he was a lock, that he was getting ready to finally have his second season on Survivor, and it was not to be. And Shane has felt a certain way about it afterwards. I think he felt that he has, touched the stove 5 times basically, and has
Mm.
finally said, I'm done getting
Enough,
burned.
yeah.
He did say in his talking with T Bird that, after Second Chance in particular, he had gambled every nickel that he had that he was going to go on. And that sort of had made him have a moment of reckoning where he started to kind of rectify, look at his situation. And he does say on the podcast, he's, quote, a probably no. But
Hmm.
I like it's really tough for me to not at least consider him,
Yeah.
considering how many times we have nearly gotten this to happen.
I agree, and I think he is such a like I said, he is a great character. He's a very kooky character. He's a villain. Hopefully, when he's not going through nicotine withdrawals, he'll be able to like really like connect with people a little bit better, talk to people a little bit better, not have such a short fuse. So I would love to see him back. Like honestly, if you told me that they would bring back the whole Kasaya tribe, I'd say yeah, okay. Like
Listen, can we do like, yeah,
please.
Kasaya versus Yanu versus Lulu? Make it a three-tribe
Yeah.
season. I'm more than happy with that. Yeah, Shane is so unapologetically himself. I mean, this is a
Mhm.
man who would completely turn a scene on its head where like they're joking about him sitting on his thinking stump and
Yeah.
then him going into this absolute tirade of like, this is my stump. It's not anybody else's. He takes a page out of Greg Buick's book and makes a coconut blackberry to talk and schedule meetings back home. And also, for what it's worth, Shane, as if you followed him on social media, know, has been keeping up with Survivor. In fact, he
Mm.
loved the crap out of Survivor 46. And I think
Mm.
he has a lot of reservations with the new era. I think he has been one of the most like vocal proponents. Specifically after the Hannah quit, I remember he went on like an entire tirade in Shane style because there's a lot of comparisons between them. Obviously, Hannah had talked about her own sort of like withdrawal, and Shane had basically said like, no, scrap it all, rebuild Survivor from the ground up. This isn't working anymore. But I don't know. I don't think we're necessarily excluding people that like, especially these old school characters that
Mhm.
talk a bit disparagingly about the new era, because that would limit it down to a very few select people.
Yeah.
Anybody else you want to highlight from this rather eclectic post merge group?
I mean, we can't be remiss without talking about Courtney. I feel like
Yeah.
she was very funny. I thought she showed some really good strategic acumen when her, Danielle, and Sari would get together. Again, Sari is probably the brains and really bounce stuff off of like Courtney and Danielle. But I thought Courtney was pretty adept at the game. Now, from what we all figured out, she rubbed people the wrong way. Apparently. Like the every day to day like living with her was a little fraught for
Yeah,
some
I'm
people.
well, I think she was able to take the Otis energy, and while Otis kind of petered out, she went with it fully. Remember, she was the one who I believe started her time on Survivor by finding a dead sea turtle on the beach and drawing a heart
Yes.
around it.
Yes. Right. And then eventually like got her whatchamacallit item.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
her
the
luxury item, which were her
luxury item.
fire
Yeah.
bolos, right?
Fire. Yeah, the fire twirling thing, which was kind of cool. I thought that was kind of cool for me. I would have been like, please do this all the time so I'm entertained in some way. But like I it's so funny. I like Courtney. So in going back and rewatching it, I was really sitting here like, why does everybody hate her so much? You know what I'm saying? Like what is it with Courtney's? You know what I'm saying? Like people just don't like Courtney's on Survivor.
I think for Courtney, it was a matter of, from our perspective, she seems like a really fun personality and such a unique character, especially at the time. But I could imagine living with her 24 hours a day is something that
Right.
I would say that about somebody like Shane as well, of just like
Exactly.
it's great to observe from afar. And so it's
Yeah.
only natural that these two were such a great pairing. I mean, you could not find a more unlikely duo to be the ones in charge of this very serious medical emergency that Bruce undergoes, resulting in the
Yeah.
second medevac in Survivor history, where you have Courtney attempting to sing to Bruce, which he's like on his deathbed, forcing her to stop. Shane, buck ass naked, carrying this stretcher out because infamously his pants were chafing. And so he was just
Mhm.
completely naked. It's an, oh, do we have to do this right now? And then the two of them alone getting into, again, a scene you could not script where Shane threatens Courtney, like, if you betray my alliance, I'll come over to your shitty apartment and kill you. And the only point that Courtney takes to contention is that her apartment's not shitty. Like, it's so brilliant. Like, these two worked so well together. And what's so funny about this as well is the fact that, like, Shane was going to bring Courtney to the end as a goat,
Yep.
which is what leads Sari to do this again, this next level strategy, get the goat, the 3-2-1
The
plurality vote of her
plurality
being
vote.
like,
Mhm.
hey, especially in a final two, if Courtney gets to the end, that takes up one spot that any of us could occupy. So even if she's not the
Mhm.
biggest threat right now, she's taken up a spot in the end game.
Ugh, I love the plurality vote. Love it. It'd be so funny. Like 76. What is the oldest contestant? Could Bruce make a comeback?
Yeah, so Rudy was 75. Joe Campo, I believe, was 72 when he came out
Mm,
for Co Wrong. But Bruce at 76,
poor
I mean, he
Bruce.
was a lot of fun. I loved
He
his little
was.
his little voice. When he would come up with things like, I believe he came back from Exile Island and the first thing he taught his new tribe was, oh, pour this contaminated water between t-shirts and it will filter it out. Like, then of course the rock garden that he gets in an argument with Courtney because she's doing yoga. And of course, what Courtney decides to do after Bruce's medevac is, in his honor, completely switches Rock Garden around and spell out, like, we love you, Bruce.
Yeah.
He's such a wild, he's a little bit more understated. I feel like he was a little more purple, but I always love the random moments when, like, he was doing karate, or like when Nick, I think, hit him in the head with a machete at the merge.
Dog, yes. Oh my gosh, that was so scary.
Yeah,
Yeah, I really like Bruce on a rewatch.
and I feel
Yeah.
terrible for him as well. Again, like, he must have been racked with so much pain. I don't think he had pooped for like 10 days since they had that big
Jeez
reward at the
Louise.
village, which is just unimaginably painful.
Mhm.
Though it did lead to maybe one of the funniest episodes in Survivor history in his medevac.
Yeah. Shout out to Bruce. But no,
Shout out to Bruce.
that's it.
I'll give a quick shout out to Sally as well. I know there's certain members of the Survivor community that find her a bit underrated. I mean, she does get saved
Yeah.
from nearly becoming a pre-merge boot through the boys of Lamina by getting saved and going
Mhm.
to Exile Island. But you know, she had some scrappiness to her, I think.
She did. I felt like I always wondered with her, like, why didn't she just join the women? Like
Hmm.
when she like why didn't she just try like split off, be like, hey guys, like I'm not as close to them. She kept letting Terry give terms to people like, oh, you join us for. I would have been like, I don't know these people. I'm with you. Like I don't
Yeah.
'Cause I really feel like she could've, like, I mean, Danielle and Courtney were on her original tribe. Again, they only spent, like, 1 cycle together, but I was kind of, hoping that they could have done, like, a women's thing, but, we just had to wait a few seasons later, and Suri would get her Black Widow Brigade, you know?
There we go. All right, well, let's
Mhm,
move into our final group here, the pre-jury portion. So, starting from the beginning, we have Timbertina Shear. Then we have the aforementioned Melinda, both quote unquote older women cast out. Then we have Misty, who holds the honor of being the first person voted to or sent to Exile Island in the opening challenge. We
mhm.
have Ruth Marie, who's probably most well known for that one sandbag challenge where the next person, Bob Dog, just grabs her and drags her over to the mat like it's nothing, and Kasaya
Yes.
wins the immunity challenge. We
Mhm.
have the aforementioned Bob Dog, definitely the biggest character of this group. The guy
You
that
think?
yeah, I was gonna. Well, listen, it's a tough comparison, but the guy who was so angry with Courtney that he drank the bottle of wine with Bruce in the outhouse, where he also dropped the deuce immediately upon them winning it. Told Courtney to her face that he was sorry he drank everyone else's wine, but not hers, and then ends up getting blindsided in this big 3-2 to 1-1 vote. We had Dan, the astronaut, who got like
Yeah.
this huge ceremonial send off. I feel like the music was different. I remember at the time
He
Panama was
did.
coming out, there was like this big commercial, like a tribal council you've never seen before. And it's like,
Yes.
oh, the old astronaut guy got taken out. And then we
Mhm.
have Nick, who is so incredibly milk toast, with the exception of him having some of the biggest WTF final words out of any contestant, where I believe he was quoting Steve Jobs, but it was so out of context that we were wondering, was it Chat GPT oriented?
I don't remember his final words. I barely remember him, and I just finished rewatching the season. So, and like Bob Dog, even him, literally all of the things you quoted were in the same episode, and that was his boot episode. Like before that, he literally got no screen time
Yeah.
at all. Um,
I think that was also the
so
challenge where they won the outhouse, where he like chops the fish like it's nothing with like one fell
yes.
swoop.
That was because honestly, that was the only time that he actually did really good in the challenge. As I'm doing the rewatch, I was getting so mad that they were like gonna vote out like Melinda or Sari because it's all that the perception, right? So the
Hmm.
perception of the older women, the older guys, the younger women, younger guys, like their perception is the older women are, what are weighing the tribe down. But if you actually watch the challenges and stuff, both Sari and Melinda for the challenge that she was there, they actually did what needed to be done, and they always put in for their tribe. Meanwhile, Bob Dog, he was the only things he was good at was the chopping of the fish and the beanbag thing, like
Hmm. And
you know.
dragging Ruth Marie around, evidently.
Exactly. So it was just like, and that's what I meant because it was just the Ruth Marie part. Because at the rest of the beanbag thing, he lost his first one. He lost the first
Mm,
match. So I just kept being like, it's that perception. Like your actual weakest link is not who you perceive to be your weakest link, and he's literally doing nothing on the tribe. He wasn't even in the four.
mm.
He really didn't do much, and we didn't get a lot of screen time for him. So I initially thought that I would put him on the list, but honestly, I didn't get anything for him, and I didn't get anything that made me want to see him more,
Mm.
um, personally for me,
Yeah.
but I don't know anything about him outside of this season,
Yeah,
you
I'm
know?
not sure either. I have to look up like what he's doing now, Bobby
Mhm.
Mason, because I don't even know, if he watches the show anymore, what he
Yeah.
engages in. I will read. I also found Nick's final words. So do you want to hear them, Mari? Should I do a
Please,
reenactment here? All you
please.
kids that are in their mid 20s and in my situation and are not sure which direction life is pulling you, you are just trying to find yourself. I urge us all, please be hungry and foolish. Find yourself. Be who you potentially are and be true to your dreams and what you really want to do. If we
Hmm.
all maximize that personal freedom, we will change the world.
Must be nice, yeah.
That's what
Hmm.
this random guy who has pretty much doing nothing airtime wise over 7 weeks decided to come in and say on his way out the game.
Sure, Nick. Sure. Like
Yeah, so it looks like Bob Dog. I don't even know if he's on social media. I don't think he did a quarantine questionnaire, so I'm not sure if he's still watching or anything. But I agree that I think, like, on paper, he was a big enough character in the brief time that he was shown on the show that, like, oh, it'd be fun to see him back. He was certainly a colorful personality blended in with the Kasaya, like, brazen attitude and candor. But I think especially as we get into this short list, I could think of quite a few more candidates I would want to see over him.
And then he's 32 on the young men's tribe. Shane is
Mhm.
34 on the older men's tribe. They really just didn't think of that
They literally
at
just cut it
all.
down the middle. They're like, "All right, first 4
Mhm.
in, last 4 out."
Yeah, that's really, really funny. I guess the person on here that I would honestly I mean, but again, age. Tina was I liked the Tina that we
Oh, yeah,
got in the one episode.
justice for Timber Tina. So for those that don't
Yeah.
know, Tina's situation was that she was 44 when she played. She was technically supposed to be on the previous season, Survivor
Oh,
Guatemala, but and this is talked about in the first episode, her son died in this
yeah,
tragic,
that was sad.
horrendous car accident.
Mhm.
And that was right before she was supposed to go out to play Guatemala. So she pulled out.
Wow.
Amy from Guatemala ends up stepping in, but she does get extended
Mm,
the invitation to come back into season 12. But you can tell from the beginning her heart is really not in it. You know, it's clear that
yeah.
she was really reconciling still with a lot of emotion. Understandably so. Grief takes time. And so as a result, you know, I think everyone kind of feels like she's socially detached and decides to get rid of her, even in lieu of someone like Suri, who might be a bit weaker and more out of her element, but at least has a bit more of that connection. And I mean, I would love to see how she would play with her head in the game. On the other hand, I
Mm.
also don't want to live in the universe where Suri is the first boot of Survivor Exile Island.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm very glad how this all shook out. You know what I'm saying? I'm really glad that Sari was able to work her magic and stay in and because honestly for me Survivor is all about relationships. Like people forget that part and I think that's what modern era Survivor has kind of really nailed. I mean, until you get rid of your number one, but um, it's getting rid of the people you don't trust or the people that you cannot rely on. To me, is number one. I like Shannon Ricard said, like, who cares about Travis strength? Like, I want the people I trust around me. So, I think Sari being able to get Melinda and Ruth Marie right to
Hmm.
vote for Tina instead of her. I thought thank you survivor gods.
Yes, and thank God there were no more leaves at the Kasaya camp, or
Yeah.
like we might have had an engineer quit happening. All right,
Mhm.
Mari, there we go. 16 players of Survivor Exile Island. We got to pick a short list.
Okay.
And listen, I mean, should I suggest we just go 2, 3, 4, 5? Or should we go Danielle, Terry, Suri, Shane?
Honestly. Yes, honestly, and then Courtney, don't wanna I feel like Courtney kinda need to be in there too though, like, it's weird, but I don't think I don't know if people would give her any votes.
Yeah, that's the thing is like
Yeah,
I also feel like we have so many Courtney types that have kind of been cast after
that's
her.
true.
Like Kendra kind of feels like a Courtney type to me in a way, you know? And
Yes.
so it's a little bit like it's always fun to see the originator of this, but I feel like
Mhm.
and we might talk about this, you know, we're not going to be on tomorrow, but the day after we're going to talk about Cook Islands, and I feel like that's
Mm.
the case I might make for Ozzy coming back. Is like there have been so many other
Mm.
Ozzy types, but Ozzy's name carries a lot of weight. With
Mhm.
no offense to Courtney, maybe
Courtney.
her name carries weight in blunt rotations, but not in survivor circles.
Okay. If you say so. 2, 3, 4, 5 is good to me, right?
Yeah, so we have
Mhm,
we'll have Daniel DiLorenzo, who I'll bring up some
mhm,
ages here, is 43. We
mhm.
have Terry Dietz, who is 64. Terry is where I would have like my most reservations from like a physical perspective, but I don't know. I feel like Terry has also remained maybe some of the most active in the Survivor community. Like, did you see
Mhm.
that he was flying Dee and Ben from 46 to an event? Like, he
No.
yeah. So he whether coincidentally or not, he has also said that like depending on his schedule, he'd obviously have to figure out how it lines up. But like, listen, can't he just fly the Fiji Airways plane that brings everybody there and get like time and a half
Yeah.
for 26 days?
Yeah, exactly. Like you get him. That's how you get him a little bit of compensation. He's like a little silver fox going on
Oh yeah,
too.
oh
Like
yeah.
look at him.
He's gotten a little more gray, obviously, in the years since, but
Hmm.
I think he's still got what it takes. And then we have Suri, who is 53, and then we have Shane, also 53 as well. So,
Hmm.
most of them definitely on the older side, but again, like, Shane and Suri are 53. Sean Rector's 52. We put him on. Shian's
Oh,
50. We put
yeah,
her on.
Sean.
Danielle's 2 years younger than the same age as Jenna Maraska, who we put on. So, like,
Oh,
especially in these old school seasons, it is all by comparison. And honestly, yes, this is a quarter of a 16-person cast, but this cast is so great. And honestly, I would did not come in here thinking that we would put Danielle on, but I think you brought up some really good points about your girl and how she could be interesting on a third time out and is maybe a bit underrated as a player.
honestly, she's probably the person I would be looking forward to coming on the most. Again, you know, bypassing Sari.
Mhm,
Because I truly think that I think she is very, very underrated. Like I really don't think people straight up first think Danielle De Lorenza when they think about Survivor. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't know if it's because this season in itself, too, for me, other than Sari, like your mind just kind of goes with Sari, what Sari did this season. But like on the rewatch, and maybe because of where it was like slotted within like between your Guatemala and before what I liked was like the golden run of like Cook Islands, Fiji, China, all that. It's just kind of like maybe this season kind of just gets maybe some people get lost in it because there's too many storylines going on. There's the rise of Suri, Terry's magic run that ends, and then some people might believe that the final two weren't the final two that deserved to be there. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
So I just I would love to see Danielle back.
All right, last thing, Mari, is of course there are many reality shows that exist out there besides Survivor. If you could pick someone from this cast to be on another reality show that wasn't
Mm.
Survivor, who would you pick?
Oh, I mean, other than Sari being on Big Brother
I
and
was
one
gonna say, Suri on The Amazing Race.
Suri and
Who would?
Izzy.
Yeah, I'd say, do you
Suri and
want Suri to race with
Izzy.
Izzy on The Amazing Race?
Yes, Suri and Izzy on the now, like, would her like she might have a better shot with Jared, but then I don't know. But I feel like Sari and Izzy would give us they would give us comedy gold, I feel
I think
like.
so.
So but also let's do RS and Vetus on Amazing Race as well.
Oh, you know what?
Mhm.
I would actually love that. Because I
Yeah.
think that the two of them have really fun rapport, and I
Mhm.
think that they campaigned together for Mr. Survivor back in the
Mhm.
day. I think they could be a very fun group where like they also have that big background story, right? Especially with Vetus and his kind of
Mhm.
troubled past and becoming clean as a result. Yeah, I think it'd be fun to like bring out the Bashkauskas brothers and put them on the Amazing Race together.
That'd be fun. Who would I wanna see in Big Brother? Who would I wanna see on
So
feeds 24/7?
So the thing is that yeah, so that I know that I'm talking with T-Bird when Shane was on, like, he's a Big Brother fan, and, like, they pimped him on, like, "Don't you wanna be in it?" He's like, "Absolutely not. I'm
Nope.
not doing it. If they told me to go to Big Brother, I'd say no." Also, another thing that might lead to, Shane being cast on this mythical season, he did say if Lex says yes, then he would say yes, and Lex is on our ballot, so
Interesting. Hmm.
yeah, I think this has actually been a common theme with a lot of these old school players is that like they're all really close with Lex. And so I
Hmm.
think that Shane has such reverence for Lex and he feels that if he had found out ahead of time that Lex was going to be on sort of like challenge style, I think that he would want to do it.
Awesome. Yep.
Yeah, cuz like I'm trying to find if there's like any other shows that Shane would want to be on and I can't really think of like maybe Shane on The Circle could be fun because he is so like such a big personality even over text if you follow him on
Mhm.
social media that I would love to see him try to communicate with somebody over through like a little chat bubble and also have him like react like, "Oh, that's a bullshit message. Why'd you send
Yeah.
that to me?"
And, like, trying to get him like, what emojis would he send?
Yes, exactly. Or would
Yeah.
he catfish as Boston? That'd be interesting.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So again, we are taking a break tomorrow at the time of this being released, Juneteenth for the holiday, but we will be coming back to cover Cook Islands when Mari considers the start of the golden era of
Mhm.
Survivor. And we're bringing on, as a guest, someone who acquired a gold medal in Survivor. The winner of Survivor 42, Marianne Oketch, will be joining me
Ah!
to talk through who to put on the shortlist from Survivor Cook Islands. Mari, as someone who has such reverence from the season, who would you
Mhm.
put on your shortlist from Cook Islands?
Um, like, how can you everybody has been on the show so many times because
And that's
that's
where we
how
go to
good
the
of a
Sari.
cast it
Yeah, that's where we
is.
go to the Sari bucket, right? Of like, okay, it's
Yes,
probably a legend season. Who are you calling?
yes, but I think, Jenny straight up,
Jenny
for that.
Guzman.
Yeah,
Interesting. I mean,
yeah, sh
she did sort of get screwed over by the
she got
bottle
shafted.
twist.
Yes, and she was doing so great before then, so I would definitely, throw Jenny on there as probably my top pick from the Cook
Wow.
Islands,
All
yeah,
right.
because
Well,
again, like I said, I like people who haven't gotten another chance.
that's true. So we'll tuck into Jenny and her 19 other cast members. Again, not tomorrow, on Thursday. Make sure you don't miss a beat of it. Mari, this was such a great time. Even more enjoyable
Yes.
than the Survivor Panama itself, which is saying a lot. What would you like to plug for people out there? Anything you'd like people to check out?
Yes, I'm slowly coming back from maternity leave, but I am back over on Crime Scene with me and Sarah Carradine. So make sure you go to subscribe at robhasawebsite.com/crime feed. Yes, go and subscribe because Sarah was holding it down while I was on maternity leave because crime doesn't stop. But I am now back and we are like having a blast doing some true crime review. If you like true crime, we talk about documentaries, docuseries, all sorts of stuff over there. So go check that out. And if you haven't already, go subscribe to the Recap Kickback podcast,
Mm-hmm.
especially on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/ at recap kickback because we are currently we're talking about them dragons, them thrones, y'all.
Yeah,
Like we
I
are.
believe at the time that this is coming out, I believe it will be a couple days after the premiere of season 2 has aired.
Yep, yep, yep. And we are so excited to be covering House of the Dragon on Recap Kickback. So in our own little special way. So if you want to hear me and Chappelle talk about Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, go do that. That's so fun. So go to recapkickback.com to subscribe and follow us on YouTube at Recap Kickback on YouTube, like youtube.com/ at Recap Kickback. And of course, follow me on Twitter at Mari Talks Too Much. That's two, like the number two. I'm always over there. I'm always talking about something going on. So follow me, something reality TV related. So
Yeah, and
that's
also
it.
I'll issue an on-air belated, of course, congratulations to the
Thank you.
birth of your child. I'm assuming did you name them like Shane Otis Fourth?
No.
You were gonna pull
No.
a Kobe from Palau and name it after a cast member on Survivor?
No. Absolutely not. Nope, 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 nope. Not out of alpha any reality TV person at all. Nope.
Not yet, at least. But yeah, I was gonna say, I can't wait for you to cover on True Crime, you and Sarah, that time that apparently a kilo of cocaine washed up on the shores of Panama, and they dealt with it for a brief second.
Right. I I forgot about that story. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it fell out of like an airplane, like a drug cartel, like kind of like Cocaine Bear, like what happened with
Yeah.
Cocaine Bear.
I
Yeah.
mean, this season is kind of like Cocaine Bear, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, it's a little ferocious and out of control, but very enjoyable at the same time.
Yes.
Well,
Exactly
hopefully
that.
you all enjoy this as much as Cocaine Bear, if not more. Again, we'll be taking the day off tomorrow, but we'll be back on Thursday, back with Cook Islands with Marianne. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.